So let's now continue work on that auth form here. Back in auth Dart, we should now add some buttons to that form and then also fine-tune those text form fields. But I'll start with the buttons. For that here, I'll first add a sized box to add some spacing between those inputs and the buttons, where I simply set a height of, let's say, 12. And then below that sized box here, I want to have two buttons, which are not next to each other, but above each other instead though. The first button will be the main button that can be used for submitting the form, and here I'll use an elevated button where the child will be a text widget where I simply want to say sign up. And this can be const. And on pressed then will be a function which at the moment will be empty, but which later will make sure that all the input values are collected and sent to Firebase. That's the idea behind this button. The second button, which I want to add below this elevated button, will be a text button here for me, which in the end should allow users to toggle and switch between sign up and login mode. Because of course this form should be usable to either create a new account if you don't have one, or log in with an existing account if you do have one. And at the moment we only have email and password inputs here, but later we'll also add image upload, but the image upload should only be enforced and available if you're creating a new account. If you're logging into an existing account, you already have an image and you don't need to upload one again. Therefore, it will be important to differentiate between login and sign up mode, and this button here will allow users to switch between those modes. So therefore here we of course also have on pressed, and at the moment I'll set this to an empty function, but we'll also have a child which displays a text widget where we in the end say create an account, or alternatively log in with an existing account or something like this, depending on the mode in which we currently are. And in the end, that's also one reason for using a stateful widget here, because now we can manage that mode as state in that widget. Here we can add a new variable that could be named underscore is login, controlling whether we are in login mode or not. And we could initially set this to true, so that login mode is our default. And then down there at the buttons, we could say that this button, which will allow us to switch between those modes, either says create an account or says I already have an account. Log in, something like this. And here I want to use a ternary expression based on the isLogin variable we just added, the isLogin property. And therefore here I'm checking whether isLogin is true. If that's the case, this button should allow us to switch to sign up mode and will therefore say create an account. Alternatively, it will say I already have an account. Log in instead. And that's a bit long, so therefore I'll just say I already have an account. And here in this function, I then of course want to switch my mode. So here we can use set state to set isLogin equal to true if it's currently false, or false if it's currently true. And we could write it like this and use a ternary expression here and check if it's true, in which case we set isLogin to false, and otherwise we set it to true. But that's unnecessarily long. A shorter way of setting isLogin to its opposite is to use an exclamation mark here and then isLogin. Because this exclamation mark basically checks for the opposite, as you learned earlier in the course. If this is true, exclamation mark true will yield false. If isLogin is false, exclamation mark isLogin will yield true. That's the idea here. So this allows us to easily switch between these two different possible values, and this button's text will then be updated based on the value. But it's not just the text of this button here, it's also the text of this button that should be updated. This should not be const. Instead here, I want to say sign up if we are in sign up mode, but I want to say log in if we are in log in mode. So log in is my alternative text, and I'll check this isLogin property with another ternary expression here. And then later, this will also influence whether we're sending a request to Firebase to create a new user or to log in an existing user. But we'll get back to that later. So for the moment, it's just about those button texts. And if we now save this, we should see these buttons here. And if I tap create an account here, you see the button texts change. If I create an account, we switch to sign up mode. If I click on I already have an account, we switch to login mode instead. Now here I just also want to adjust the button styling, and I could do this through my theme, but since in this app here, this will basically be the only place where I'll use an elevated button, I'll adjust the styling right here on the button by setting style equal to elevated button.style from, as you also learned it a bit earlier in the course, or I guess way earlier in the course, but either way, here we can then set the foreground color and the background color, and I want to set the background color here, and I'll set the background color to theme of context, color scheme, to access the colors of my globally available theme, and here I'll choose primary container. And with that, I'll have this nice background here. But with that, we now added those buttons. Therefore, it's now time to come back to those inputs and make sure that those inputs get validated, and we also then are able to extract the entered values.